Today, we are diving into one of the best horizontal shoot-'em-ups of the 16-bit era, Thunder Force 4. Released in 1992 for the Sega Genesis, this game was the pinnacle of the Thunder Force series and a landmark title in the shoot-'em-up genre. Known for its intense action, breathtaking graphics, and epic soundtrack, Thunder Force 4 pushed the limits of Sega's hardware in ways few thought possible at the time. The game was a technical marvel that showed what could be achieved with the Genesis's limited processing power, squeezing every ounce of performance from the console. For gamers who were lucky enough to experience it in its heyday, Thunder Force 4 was an instant classic. It represented everything great about the early 90s shoot-'em-up craze, a mix of overwhelming odds, endless enemy waves, and the satisfaction of squeezing through narrow gaps of firepower to survive just a little bit longer. What truly sets Thunder Force 4 apart, though, is its ambitious vision. This wasn't just a shoot-'em-up, it was a showcase of what the Genesis could do. The smooth, parallax scrolling in the background, the gigantic enemy sprites, and the frame rate, which rarely dropped, even during the most hectic moments, all came together to create an experience that felt ahead of its time. In many ways, Thunder Force 4 is a time capsule of what made retro gaming so magical. It captured the essence of what made shoot-'em-ups such a dominant force during the 8-bit and 16-bit eras, while injecting enough innovation to keep the genre moving forward. Today, it's remembered as one of the best games on the Sega Genesis and an essential title for fans of the genre. While shoot-'em-ups from the early 90s weren't exactly known for their deep narratives, Thunder Force 4 managed to deliver a more fleshed-out storyline than many of its peers. The plot picks up after the events of Thunder Force 3. A new faction rises from the ashes of the Oren Empire, a highly dangerous rebel force known as Vios. This group seeks to continue the destructive campaign that the Oren Empire had begun, threatening the galaxy with their advanced weaponry and colossal war machines. At the heart of the Vios uprising is a deadly superweapon known as the Vasteel, an enormous battleship brimming with destructive potential. This massive dreadnought is not only heavily armed but also protected by a legion of ruthless and technologically advanced forces. Enter the player, piloting the sophisticated Rhynex fighter, the newest and most powerful spacecraft in the Galaxy Federation's arsenal. The Rhynex is designed specifically to handle the immense firepower and strategic challenges posed by Vios. The story unfolds across 10 stages, with each environment representing a different stronghold of the Vios forces. From barren wastelands to deadly oceans, the locations are as varied as the enemies themselves. Throughout the game, the plot doesn't necessarily take center stage, but it's woven into the game's atmosphere. While Thunder Force 4 doesn't bombard the player with dialogue or cutscenes, it uses environmental storytelling and a sense of escalating danger to keep the narrative flowing. Each boss encounter feels like an epic showdown, as if you're taking down key figures in the Vios hierarchy. Thunder Force 4 doesn't aim to tell a complex or character-driven story. Instead, it delivers a classic space opera narrative. One where the stakes are high, the enemy is relentless, and the fate of the galaxy rests on the shoulders of a lone pilot and their powerful fighter. When it comes to gameplay, Thunder Force 4 is nothing short of a masterpiece in the shoot-'em-up genre. The core mechanics are familiar to fans of the series and other side-scrolling shooters, but it's the refinements and innovations that make this entry stand out. From the start, the game hits you with its fast-paced, high-energy action, requiring quick reflexes, strategic thinking, and mastery over the game's diverse arsenal. Players take control of the Rhynex fighter, an incredibly powerful and versatile spacecraft, loaded with customizable weapons and defense systems. Unlike earlier entries in the series, Thunder Force 4 introduces some meaningful changes to how players navigate its challenging stages. One of the game's defining features is the ability to freely scroll vertically within levels, giving players much more freedom than in most side-scrolling shooters at the time. Another standout mechanic is the game's weapon system. The Rhynex has access to multiple weapons, and players can switch between them at any time during gameplay. The weapons vary in function and usefulness, offering both offensive and defensive advantages depending on the situation. In addition to the main weapons, the Rhynex can equip 2 claw drones that hover around the ship and add extra firepower. These claws are essential for both offense and defense, allowing you to deal with enemies coming from all directions while also providing a bit of shielding from enemy fire. The claws mirror your weapon choices, further amplifying the devastation you can unleash on enemy waves. Of course, Thunder Force 4 doesn't make it easy for players. The game is infamous for its difficulty, especially on the higher settings. Enemy waves are relentless, and the screen can quickly become overwhelmed with bullets, obstacles, and aggressive enemy ships. One of the most challenging aspects of the game is keeping track of all the action on screen. A major factor that contributes to the game's intensity is its boss battles. Each level ends with a showdown against a massive, often screen-filling boss that boasts unique attack patterns and stunning designs. These battles require patience and pattern recognition, as each boss tends to have weak points that you'll need to exploit while avoiding their devastating attacks. Despite its difficulty, Thunder Force 4 is surprisingly fair. The controls are tight and responsive, giving players the tools they need to survive even the most chaotic situations. The ability to continue after losing all your lives, along with multiple difficulty settings, allows players of all skill levels to enjoy the game. With its smooth gameplay mechanics, inventive weapon system, and punishing but fair difficulty curve, it's no wonder that Thunder Force 4 is still regarded as one of the best shoot-'em-ups of all time. The graphics and sound in Thunder Force 4 are nothing short of a technical showcase for the Sega Genesis. Released in 1992, this game pushed the boundaries of what the 16-bit hardware could handle, delivering visuals that still impress to this day, alongside an adrenaline-pumping soundtrack that has become iconic within the retro gaming community. At first glance, Thunder Force 4 immediately stands out for its sheer level of detail. The game's developers, at Technosoft, pushed the Sega Genesis to its limits, implementing impressive techniques that brought its futuristic world to life. Each of the game's 10 stages has its own unique theme, and the diversity in the environments is a feast for the eyes. Whether you're flying over sun-scorched deserts, dodging enemies through dense jungles, or battling underwater in alien oceans, the game keeps things visually fresh throughout its entire runtime. At the time, parallax scrolling was common in many games, but Thunder Force 4 took it to the next level. Multiple layers of scrolling background give each stage an incredible sense of scale and immersion. For example, in the opening level, the player flies over a landscape with 3 or 4 distinct layers moving at different speeds, creating the illusion of a vast, sprawling battlefield. This visual depth helped make Thunder Force 4 feel larger and more epic than most other side-scrolling shooters of its era. The Thunder Force series had always been known for its killer soundtracks, but Thunder Force 4 took things to a whole new level. Composed by Toshiharu Yamanishi, the music in Thunder Force 4 perfectly captures the intensity of the gameplay. Mixing high-energy rock and electronic tunes, the soundtrack gets your adrenaline pumping right from the start. Each level has its own distinct track, ranging from upbeat guitar riffs to more atmospheric synth-heavy tunes for the darker, more intense stages. The soundtrack complements the game's fast pace and chaotic action perfectly, keeping you engaged and immersed in the experience. The Sega Genesis was known for its distinct FM sound chip, which gave many games their unique, metallic-sounding tunes. Thunder Force 4 utilizes this chip to full effect, creating some of the most memorable tracks of the era. Sound effects are equally as impressive. The weapon fire, explosions, and enemy destruction all have a satisfying punch to them, and the sound design ensures that even during the most chaotic moments, every shot and explosion feels impactful. There's a certain weight to the sound effects that makes blasting through enemy ships all the more satisfying. The graphics and sound in Thunder Force 4 aren't just good by the standards of the early 90s, they're still impressive today. The combination of intricate sprite work, smooth animations, brilliant parallax scrolling, and a pulse-pounding soundtrack makes Thunder Force 4 not only a technical marvel, but also a sensory experience that keeps players coming back for more. Released at a time when the genre was in its golden age, Thunder Force 4 managed to rise above the crowded field of shooters, and decades later it remains a shining example of what the genre can achieve when everything, from the gameplay and design to the music and presentation, comes together in perfect harmony. For many, Thunder Force 4 is synonymous with the peak of 16-bit shooters. In a genre known for fast-paced action, extreme difficulty, and high replay value, Thunder Force 4 is considered one of the most refined and polished examples. The game's combination of vertical scrolling within horizontal stages, innovative weapon system, and challenging yet rewarding gameplay set a new standard. Its influence can be seen in many shooters that followed. Critically, Thunder Force 4 was a huge success. Reviewers at the time praised it for its incredible graphics, intense action, and memorable soundtrack. It was considered a technical marvel on the Sega Genesis, showing just how much the hardware was capable of when in the right hands. One of the ways the game's legacy has endured is through its inclusion in various re-releases and collections. Thunder Force 4 was brought to the Sega Saturn in Japan as part of the Thunder Force Gold Pack 2, which bundled it with Thunder Force 3, allowing a new generation of gamers to experience the series. More recently, Thunder Force 4 was included in the Sega Ages collection for the Nintendo Switch, where it was remastered with some quality-of-life improvements and additional features, such as easier access to power-ups and weapons, making it a more forgiving experience for modern players while still retaining the core challenge. Today, Thunder Force 4 is often cited in discussions of the best video games of all time. It holds a special place in the hearts of shoot-'em-up fans, alongside other genre titans from the 90s. Its intense difficulty, stunning graphics, and killer soundtrack continue to inspire retro gaming fans and developers alike. The game's legacy is also cemented in the retro gaming scene through speedruns, fan remixes of its soundtrack, and high-score competitions. The community around the game remains strong, with new players discovering it every year, often praising how well it has aged. While many games from the early 90s struggle to stay relevant in today's gaming landscape, Thunder Force 4 feels as sharp and exhilarating as it did when it first launched. Thunder Force 4 isn't just a game. It's a benchmark in the history of the shoot-'em-up genre and a defining moment for Sega Genesis fans. It stands as a reminder of what made that era of gaming so special: challenging but rewarding gameplay, groundbreaking technical achievements, and a dedication to pushing the boundaries of what games could be. Thunder Force 4 will always be remembered as one of the greatest titles of the 16-bit generation, a gem that continues to inspire and entertain gamers worldwide.